Hey!
Olá!
In this video, we're going to be giving our review for the cooperative game Pandemic. Pandemic is the first game in the series of Pandemic games. It's a 2 to 4 player cooperative game originally from 2008 by designer Matt Leacock and published by Z-Man Games. The version we have and will be reviewing for is the 2013 edition, which included 2 new characters to play and is the most readily available one on the market. In this game, each player will take on a unique role and must work together to discover the cure to 4 diseases, which are quickly spreading around the world.
The game gets set up with players getting a role card at random. The player roles are all unique and offer different special abilities, which you'll find helpful during the gameplay. The contingency planner, the dispatcher, the medic, the operations expert, the quarantine specialist, the researcher, and the scientist. Players take turns where they will carry out 4 actions, draw cards, and infect cities. Starting with the actions, players can choose from the following: 4 different movements: drive or ferry, direct flight, charter flight, or shuttle flight. Build a research station, treat a disease, share knowledge, or discover a cure, which is important for progressing towards the winning condition, where you'll trade 5 matching color city cards in your hand at any available research station.
With the actions done, the player must then draw 2 cards from the player deck, keeping to a hand limit of 7. Here you can get city cards, event cards, which allow for bonus actions, or epidemic cards. With epidemic cards is where the game's difficulty suddenly ramps up. If an epidemic card is drawn, then increase the infection rate, fully infect 1 city from the bottom of the infection deck, and finally shuffle the infection discard pile and add it back to the top of the infection draw pile. After the 2 cards have been drawn and any epidemic cards resolved, if you are unlucky enough to get one, it's time to infect cities. On every player's turn, a number of cities will get infected equal to the number in the infection rate track. During the infection of cities, an outbreak can occur. When this happens, you will need to place 1 disease cube of the same color onto every connected city. 3 cubes on the connected city already? Then we have a chain outbreak. When a chain outbreak occurs, the outbreak marker increases by 1. This outbreak tracker acts as one of the 3 possible ways the game can be lost. The other 2 ways are if you run out of disease cubes to put on the board, or if you are unable to draw any more player cards. Victory can only be achieved when the cures to all 4 diseases have been discovered.
The game comes with a nice and clear rulebook. There are also plenty of player aids, both individual cards for the players and present on the game board itself, which act as reminders for what step to do next. We pushed through and taught ourselves this game one evening when we were very, very tired. We managed it, but do recommend your first playthrough to be well rested. After playing a few times, the game has become very easy to reach for and play without having to check over the rulebook again. And we've been able to teach it to friends with ease. I think this is a fine game to play for folks that have played board games before. For people completely new to the hobby, we personally like to first play Forbidden Island, with Pandemic oftentimes being played right after. Many of the actions and game mechanics feel the same, making it a great stepping stone into Pandemic.
Inside the box, you will find 7 roll cards and matching color pawns, a 59 player card deck, 4 reference cards, enough for each player, a 48 card infection deck, 96 disease cubes, 24 for each of the 4 colors, 4 cure markers, 1 infection rate marker, 1 outbreak marker, 6 research stations, and 1 board presenting the world map. The card quality is very nice, with a linen finish and good cardstock. There is plenty of card shuffling in this game, however, so we have been considering to sleeve them to make them last a bit longer. The color disease cubes are nice and have a really good presence on the board, though I have noticed a few of them getting chipped over time. This isn't detrimental to the gameplay, however, and it still feels really good value for money in that regard. It doesn't detract from the overall quality in our opinion. It just shows how well loved and played the game is.
Pandemic can be enjoyed on Board Game Arena, which is a great way to learn and try the game to see if it would be for you. Playing on Board Game Arena takes away much of the required admin you might have to do, while also ensuring you can only play valid moves. It's a nice way to play with friends online too, from anywhere in the world. Please note, however, this is part of Board Game Arena's premium catalog, so would require at least 1 premium member to start a table.
Okay, where to start? What we're covering today is just the very first in a large line of Pandemic games. Are you ready? Pandemic on the Brink, which is an expansion. Pandemic in the Lab, which is an expansion. Pandemic State of Emergency, another expansion. Pandemic The Cure. Pandemic The Cure Experimental Meds, which is an expansion for the previously mentioned game. Pandemic Contagion. Pandemic Hot Zone North America. Pandemic Hot Zone Europe. Pandemic Rapid Response. Okay, but wait, there's more. Pandemic Legacy Season 0. Pandemic Legacy Season 1. Pandemic Legacy Season 2. Pandemic Iberia. Pandemic Fall of Rome. Pandemic Rising Tide. Pandemic Reign of Cthulhu. Star Wars The Clone Wars. And World of Warcraft Wrath of the Lich King. And I know those last two didn't have the word pandemic in them, but they are part of the they use the pandemic system, and they are listed as official implementations of that system. Okay, and so with that, there are also plenty of third-party goodies available if you really like the game and want to enhance it. We ourselves have an insert from Folded Space, still to set up, that will allow us to organize the base game components along with 3 expansions. So as you can see, there's a whole lot to the world of Pandemic. Okay, so time to conclude this video with our final thoughts and scores for the game. I really love this game, and it is right up there with my favorite games of all time, so far.
For me too, I really like this game. This was my second fully co-op game, the first being Forbidden Island, and many years ago the semi-co-op Codenames, but this solidified my appreciation for co-ops. I really like to work as a team to fight evil or save the world.
It's consistently delivered a fun gaming experience for just the 2 of us and with a small group.
I like it as 2 players and with big groups too. We have even played with more players than 4. We have been able to play it with 5 and 6 people by just joining 2 people for 1 character, and it still worked well, to be honest.
For me, this game is best enjoyed with a physical copy. We have tried it a couple of times digitally, but it felt like it removed some of the tension from the game, and I really liked that.
True, it's not so intense. I like the interaction among the players, the discussions and tactics it can bring. I like that it's very thematic. You really get into the game theme while playing it. You are forced to make tough decisions, like sacrificing a city or an area of the map in order to save humankind in the end. And the idea of doing it as a united force with different people as a group, opposed to saving the world single-handedly, is much more satisfying in my opinion. It's a romantic outcome of a scenario like this.
One of the things I really like in this game is the slow brewing tension when it comes to the second part of the player's turn, which is where you have to draw 2 cards. Because it's when that epidemic card eventually gets pulled, you know it's not going to be a fun time. Suddenly, all the work you did in removing some infection cubes gets put on the line, with previously infected cities going back to the top of the draw pile, ready to get infected again, and soon.
And I'm a pro epidemic card drawer. I'm always the one pulling them. But I like that you can be having a great game, almost winning the game, and then a few consecutive bad cards can screw you up and the world dies.
Yep, we've had a couple of games now where one of us had enough cards to discover the last cure to win the game, but we had to wait for the turn to come around for them to reach the research station. In which time someone drew another epidemic card or an outbreak had occurred, losing us the game in the very, very last moments.
Good times. And it has a lot of replayability. Not only will it depend on the cards you draw, but it will depend as well on the roles and abilities of the players, who have really different and sometimes complementary effects on the game. Even at 2 players, the game can become very different and very difficult depending on which characters you got. It is a great game that is still very present both in topic and gameplay. It has been able to keep up with the times.
So, as for our final score then, this is an easy 5 out of 5 for me. That's putting it in the good old Magic Beans territory. I've never had a bad time with this game, even if we lose. It's just so fun to work together to try and get that victory. Even in our first couple of games, we had actually misunderstood the rules and we assumed we needed to eradicate all the viruses and clear every cube off of the map. And while we obviously didn't survive that, it was a lot of fun trying. And since then we've learned how to play properly, and it continues to be just as fun whenever we bring it to the table.
For me, it's 5-2, twinsies. This game is always a pleasure to bring to the table. One issue for me though, maybe the only issue really, it's the white pawn. It messes my perception of the game because the research centers are white too. So far, aside from my colorblind nephew, I'm the only person I know with this issue. I'm not colorblind myself, but it really messes up the visualization and perception of the game. I always try to swap that pawn to a different color one when any of us gets the medic. And another thing, we have yet to experience an issue brought up by some people when one player tries to monopolize the game, taking charge of all the decisions. We have a few good groups of people to play it with where everyone is able to have a discussion without trying to overpower others' opinions. Even if there are some disagreements, we always find a consensus together and ultimately respect the choice of the one playing that turn.
Yep, if it's your turn, it's your decision. So, that has been our review for Pandemic. Again, if it sounds like a game you might be interested in, then it is well worth checking out on Board Game Arena if you're able to. Thank you all so much for watching. We've been Board Game Beans.
You've been you.
Have a lovely day and
Happy gaming!